So when was the last time we ever saw something this mellow from Tim Burton? Because the most I can think of is probably Big Fish, but I've only seen it once. Anyway, this is Big Eyes. This is my review for the new Tim Burton movie, which is pretty much a biopic about this painter named Margaret Keane, played by Amy Adams, who draws these paintings of kids with these just huge eyes. Back in the 50s and 60s, they were like big. My dad used to tell me stories like how these things were like just everywhere. People couldn't get enough of them, and now they just seem a bit goofy. But that's his opinion. Basically, she moves to San Francisco after a failed marriage to try to pursue her art career. She meets someone by the name Walter Keane, played by Christoph Waltz, who really admires the paintings. Both of them get married. That's why her last name ends up being Keane. And so they start selling the paintings. However, it gets to a point where Walter starts to lie about the fact that he had created the paintings, but in fact, it was actually Margaret who made them. And as you can guess, the movie is about her trying to just be quiet with this lie, as Walter just goes out there and brags about, yes, I made these paintings. That's all me. The two writers for this movie are Scott Alexander and Larry Krasuski, who wrote Ed Wood that Tim Burton made 20 years ago. Shit. And it's actually nice to see Tim Burton do something that's a little more toned down, but also deals with a subject matter that's more in his comfort zone. I mean, after all the reimagining he's done for the past decade, Alice in Wonderland, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, Planet of the Apes, Dark Shadows, it's really nice to see him do something a little more simplistic without his wife, Helena Bonham Carter, or Johnny Depp. And unfortunately, probably one of the main criticisms I have with this movie is that it just isn't as creative as some of his other movies. I mean, it's a good movie. I'll just say that right now, right here. It's a good movie, but the story itself isn't as interesting compared to Ed Wood. It's still a really neat story. Before I go on to the criticisms, I want to talk about the good, because this movie has more right than wrong. Like with all Tim Burton's movie, the art direction and production design is really good. Really captures the feel of late 50s and the entire decade of the 60s, which is expected from a Tim Burton movie. All the actors do a good job. Amy Adams, Christoph Waltz, and Kristen Ritter, who's going to be Jessica Jones. She is the one who kind of stood out to me, besides the main two. It does have other people in it, like Jason Schwartzman, Terrence Stamp, and a few other noticeable actors, but Kristen Ritter was the one who, she's not in it that much, but she does leave an impression. It also can be very funny at points, mainly with Christoph Waltz as Walter Keane, who basically steals the whole show in this movie. He's very entertaining. There's one problem I have with him, though. Throughout the whole movie, I thought he was German because Christoph Waltz's German accent really is out there. It's unavoidable to the ear. And the whole time when Walter would say something like, oh, I've been to France, I painted all this in France, I went to art school in Europe, I kind of believed it. But when you actually look up the real Walter Keane, he's like from the middle of America. And it made me think, wait a minute, then did he really not do that in real life? Because as good as Christoph Waltz is, he can't do an American accent. That's one of the big faults, because for a while I actually believed some of the stuff that he said, but actually looking up the guy, it's like, maybe that's not entirely true. And while Amy Adams is good, she ultimately doesn't have much to do, which is disappointing because this story is kind of supposed to be mainly focused on her. She's the one who painted these big eyes, as they're called, and unfortunately, a lot of her time is in a studio painting these things, while the main focus is on Christoph Waltz, who goes around talking out of his ass about how he painted all these. But once the movie gets near the end, she ultimately has more to do and focuses on her. So I think that this is a good movie. Is it Tim Burton's best? Absolutely not. But after a decade of these reimaginings, it's definitely good to see him try something a little more tame. So I'm going to say this movie is good, but it's not great. It's not like an Ed Wood where it's like, oh my god, you gotta go see this movie right now. It's not perfect, but it's definitely enjoyable. And that's my review for Big Eyes. Leave a comment, tell me what you thought of the movie. Like, subscribe, go check out my video blog channel. You can follow me on Twitter at AlexGA462. Follow me on Instagram at TheRealMrRobinson. And go like me on Facebook /TheRealMrRobinson. You can also check out my written movie reviews on Geek Down Nation. This is The Real Mr. Robinson telling you there's only one. See you guys later.